Order, order. We now come to the second debate, patient medical records and NHS England care data. Roger Godsiff.
Mr Weir, it's always a great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I welcome the opportunity to make a contribution to the debate today on how our health service can use patient data to improve healthcare. Mr Weir, using data collected by the NHS to improve patient care sounds like a wonderful idea, and it should be something that we can all support. However, almost nobody in the country, apart from the NHS England, Department of Health, and companies with a commercial interest in this area, support what has been proposed. This scheme, which had the chance to change and to bring back huge benefits for patients, has suffered from a complete failure to listen to either patients or doctors. And I say this, Mr Weir, the bottom line is that people simply do not want their medical data to be sold to the private sector or used for profit-making activities, and no amount of awareness raising or leafleting is going to change that. What I want to ensure is that we have a consent-based model for using patient data which patients themselves are happy with and have confidence in. Patients' opinions should be used to inform the way care.data works, not trampled over in the hurry to extract data. Mr Weir, patients matter, but we have heard no apology to all those who were not properly informed about care.data and whose confidential data would have been extracted without their knowledge if there had not been this hastily arranged delay. Why, I ask, have we had no apology to the inpatients who did not receive the leaflet, those with learning difficulties or vision impairments who could not read or understand it, those whose first language is not English, or to the elderly and sick and infirm who could not get to their GPs to discuss the scheme? I will.
I fully support the principles behind care.data, but I think we need some balance here. Would he also accept that, in fact, no patients were informed at all about the fact that their HES data was being released under the last administration and had no opportunity either to opt in or opt out?
Roger Godsiff.
I would most certainly accept that. I know that the honourable members already raised this with the government. I think the government gave an answer and then had to apologise for the answer they gave. I had to correct it.
If you will, I was referring to the Labour government.
Well, you don't have a Labour minister answering at this moment in time. You have a Department of Health, which is peopled by members of the coalition government. Let me make it clear, Mr Weir. This is not an argument between people who are in favour of research and those who are against it. Of course, we all want to facilitate life-saving medical research, but I want to do so without damaging patient confidentiality or public confidence in the NHS. We now have another chance to get this right, and we've 6 months in which to do it. I will.
I'm grateful, and I would like to congratulate my honourable friend for securing a very timely debate on a very important subject. But would he agree with me that a scheme that's already lacking in public confidence isn't helped when Atos has been awarded the contract to extract the data from GP records? Does he agree with me that that should never have happened?
Roger Godsiff.
I entirely agree with my honourable friend. Indeed, I'll come to that later. As I said, we now have an opportunity, 6 months, to try and get the scheme right. If the government now addresses the many concerns raised about privacy, about consent, about the creeping commercialisation of our health service, then it has the opportunity to create a scheme with enormous benefits for healthcare and for research. But I say this, if it does not, and it continues to steamroll ahead and ignore public concern, then in 6 months' time it will find itself in precisely the same place as it is now, faced by massive public opposition to a scheme which has the potential to do so much good and to save lives.
Barbara Keeley.
I wonder if my honourable friend has noticed an issue which emerged that NHS England actually uploaded a vast amount, 188 million records of hospital patient data to Google servers. This was actually done, we've already heard mention of the firm Atos, by PA Consulting, who lost a Home Office contract a few years ago because of data loss. Does my honourable friend agree with me that it appears NHS England has now lost control of the IT side of this project, and that what we actually need before we go forward is full disclosure of all the uses up to date of patient data?
Roger Godsiff.
My honourable friend makes a very good point, and I hope that the Minister's taken note of what she said, and I hope that the Department will be forthcoming in identifying exactly how much confidential NHS data has been released to private profit-making companies, and he might also point out how much income the government's received from that. Mr Weir, there are a huge number of problems with the existing scheme. I could mention the information leaflets, which look more like junk mail and has no opt-out return slip on them. The fact that data extraction was planned to start before the code of practice on who would be allowed to access the data was completed, or the lack of a clear figure of cost. But perhaps the most damaging flaw in this whole plan has been the refusal to listen to or address these concerns when they were raised by doctors and patients. We simply cannot and should not bring in a scheme which lacks the consent and approval of the vast majority of people whose confidential health data will be used.
Thank the Honourable Gentleman for bringing this matter to the Hall for consideration. The second time in 3 weeks we've had a chance to debate this very issue. The data collection is important because of the benefits that can come from that. The confidentiality and people's confidence in the system has been undermined. But does the Honourable Gentleman agree with me that the fact that this NHS data collection is specific to England, and that the Northern Ireland Assembly Minister responsible has indicated he would have some concerns over a similar project or proposal for him, indicates that there is not unanimous support for it across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Roger Godsiff.
Well, the honourable member makes, as usual, an excellent point. It just goes to show that the Northern Ireland Assembly view this with more concern than the Department of Health seem to at this moment in time. Mr Weir, I say again, simply to spend the next 6 months dropping more leaflets through letterboxes or building a website is not going to be anywhere near good enough. The government must now come up with a coherent plan of how it will change care.data to address the many concerns which have been raised, and NHS England must work out how it will let people know about it. Basically, the government's got two choices. It can stop fighting with GPs and patients who are unhappy with the scheme, because I can assure the Minister that the GPs and patients who've contacted me have got plenty of ideas about how this scheme could operate with proper safeguards built in. And I would like to ask the Minister whether he will commit during the 6-month period to engaging with GPs and patient groups about their concerns. Mr Weir, as I've said, the government's got two options. It can either ensure that all the patient data extracted is only shared with non-profit making bodies working within the NHS or with recognised medical charities. The second option, of course, is to allow identifiable data to be extracted and to be used by companies for profit, but only surely when patients have specifically opted in to permit this. The one thing any new scheme must have is clarity. Which data sets and which variables will be released? Who decides what information or combination counts as identifiable information? Who will be held accountable if data is wrongly released? and confidentiality breaches occur? What will happen if a patient withdraws their consent after data has been extracted because they change their mind? The government's got to engage, as I've said, with GPs and with patients. And they could do far worse than look at the survey carried out by Pulse, which showed that 3/4 of GPs believe that NHS England should abandon the opt-out system of patient consent and ensure that data is only extracted after patients have given their consent.
Bottomley.
Is there any reason to believe that the opt-in would come to more than about 13%, which is what happens in some other countries? And what use is that to the future generations who want to have their conditions cured and their diseases ended by good medicine?
Roger Godsiff.
Well, if the right honourable member believes only 13% would choose to opt in, doesn't that rather prove that 87% have got rather considerable concerns about the whole basis on which this scheme is being put forward, and that they do not want their data to be taken outside of the confidentiality agreement that exists with their GP? I've given way on many occasions. Could I
I won't want to intervene on him again, but he did ask the question. The answer is no, I don't. It's inertia that's the big problem.
Sir Peter, as we well know, that's not a point of order. It's up to the honourable member whether he takes interventions in any event. Roger Godsiff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can I point out that the Pulse survey found that as many as 1 in 12 GPs are considering opting all of their patients out of their scheme, and 33% said they were undecided. Unless public awareness of the GP's confidence improves massively in the next 6 months, we will just see huge opt-outs. But what will be the consequences for the health service? I asked a question of the Minister, what would happen if a GP refuses to upload patient data? And a rather disconcerting reply came back, which said NHS England would need to consider whether to take remedial action for breach of contract. Can the Minister tell us today whether this remedial action would make it impossible for GPs to continue practicing? Can he guarantee that doctors will not lose their jobs for doing what they believe to be best for their patients, protecting the confidentiality of their personal data? Mr. Weir, NHS England has said that they're having a 6-month delay because they want to ensure that the public better understands what's being proposed. But can I make this point? That is a hugely arrogant argument, because what it's basically saying is, look, we know best, and we tried to get this through by stealth, but we got found out, and therefore we'll have a 6-month delay while we try and explain it better to you, among public out there. Because we know best and we understand and you don't. Mr. Weir, as I just said, in response to my right honourable friend, 87% of the population have got considerable concerns about this and do not want their data to go outside of the confidentiality that exists between a patient and their doctor. I have given way on many occasions. NHS England needs to start listening. GPs in Birmingham, where I come from, have said they simply do not have time to have this proper conversation with patients about data sharing. GP surgeries are already stretched and patients struggle to get an appointment within a reasonable time frame. Are we really suggesting, Mr. Weir, that each GP should be talking to patients about the minutiae of a data sharing scheme when already people who are ill cannot get an appointment? Is this really the best use? Is this really the best use of doctors' time? The issue of who is going to extract this information has already been raised, and it's been pointed out that Atos appear to have got the contract. Well, at first I thought this was a joke, and I looked at the calendar to check it wasn't 1st of April. But if it is seriously being suggested that Atos, which is probably the most loathed and inept company operating in the UK, is going to be left to extract this data, then all I can say is, God help the patients of this country. Because already the DWP found that 60% of Atos assessments into disability have been overturned at appeal. This company is absolutely hopeless. And how on earth the government can award a contract to them to extract patient data? And I would ask the Minister the question, is it going to be done in this country or on the other side of the world? And I have no confidence whatsoever that Atos will be able to retain the confidentiality that patients want. Mr. Weir, I come to a conclusion. The choice is between protecting patient confidentiality and saving lives, say some people. But this is a false choice. As I said right at the beginning, people who are concerned about this, like myself, are not against medical research and are not against information being provided to allow that research to go ahead. What I am opposed to, and what the vast majority of people in this country are opposed to, is for private information about patients being sold off to private companies for private gain. That cannot be right, and I would urge the government to look at this again and to listen to what doctors and patients are saying.
Dr. Daniel Poulter.